Okay. So, what do people who are from the outside looking in need to understand about industrial wind in Vermont, from your perspective, that is kind of missing from their analytical lens?
Well, they need to understand that when they, of course, the corporations put it where the best wind is, the best wind is on the ridge lines, and the ridge lines are both sensitive ecosystems and very much a part of the Vermont brand of who we are, and those two factors would say, you need to listen to the Vermonters about how they use their state.
And what do you think people miss when they read in the article? Like, looking at a lot of the articles, they'll kind of be like, saying Green Mountain Power said this, and then opposition people don't like it for aesthetics, noise, and environmental impact. What do you think is kind of missed in that representation?
The representation is the corporate profit motive that that's totally missed there.
And how do you think Vermont can? So our renewable energy goals are 90% by 2050, and it is pretty clear on global climate data that we need to be producing our energy from renewable sources. So how do you think Vermont can get there, and what would a clean energy Vermont look like to you?
Well, I have significant problem with the goal to begin with. I mean, why don't we say 100% of people will have good health care? Why don't we say, everybody will have a college education? Why don't we pick other goals? And so taking a renewable energy goal for Vermont to address a global problem is just oversimplistic. I mean, a global problem requires a global solution. What we do in Vermont is absolutely token in terms of dealing with the fundamental problem.
So you think it should be kind of addressed from like a United Nations level rather than kind of a like dispersed community action in small places?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly other benefits other than, I plan to have solar panels on this barn by the end of the summer, just to provide myself with some independence and help in some kind of way, and it doesn't break my wallet. So moving in the directions that don't have as much damage as that, I think are reasonable. But to say that that's more important than healthcare, or that's more important than education, or that's more important than community cohesiveness, is not doesn't make sense. I think that's a corporate marketing trick that the previous administration bought into, because it sounds really nice, but it doesn't give you any awareness of other things that we should be doing, competing costs, opportunity costs.
What do you think of the one of the kind of Vermont opinions that go in favor of these kind of projects are that, oh, well, I turned my lights on, so I should pay a due for that in dealing with the production, the negative sides of the production of it in my own area.
I mean, that's taking some responsibility for, your impact upon the earth, and it seems noteworthy. It seems worthy. See, the other part of the picture, which I didn't mention, is that at the same time we destroy ridgeline down here, there's 13 times that amount of renewable energy being wasted, being dumped over the border. Okay, in Hydro Quebec has got and through 2026 has got 13 times the output of that project as excess, which they're dumping. You know, so
What do you mean by that?
with the Hydro-Quebec overbuilt their renewable energy facility, their hydro facilities. And so that they actually generate more energy than they can sell. And that amount is 13 times the output of this large wind project.
I think looking at the data, I think it seems that hydroelectric projects have a significantly larger impact on the like water ecosystems than a wind project has on a.
I would concur with that, but on the other hand, it's already been built, you know, and they're not going to unbuild it. So that mistake was made decades ago.
And I guess talk about how the grid plays into this, because a big criticism of the project is, yeah, you're producing wind here, but it's just going into the grid and is identical once it's in the grid as a coal sourced electron or whatnot, and how the grid plays into the effectiveness.
Well, one problem with the grid is the capacity. I mean, one of the major reasons that this other project behind me that didn't go forward is because the grid in this region can only handle so much renewable energy at a time, and so that you know, sometimes on a nice windy day, these turbines down here, these 21 turbines in Lowell, will be shut down because they can't use the energy because the grid can't handle it. And so, you know, the grid is a constraint. Whereas, you know, a small solar installation here, there's no grid constraint. But with a big project like that, an industrial project, you begin to have problems with capacity and managing the grid. So that's one aspect of it, and the other aspect is when you referred to is that, you know, once electricity is on the grid, you can't determine whether it's renewable or not renewable, or it's coal or nuclear. You know, there's probably I haven't thought about that too much, but you know, there's probably a benefit to the grid in the sense of, you know, it makes us dependent upon each other, and hopefully we work together and share. You know, I don't mind sharing Vermont's electricity with other folks.
Yeah, and I think one of the main problems that impacts like not being able to directly reduce fossil fuel production is because as the utilities have monopolies on the area regulated by the state, they have a legal obligation to guarantee electricity at all times. So they can't chance not having the production from an intermittent source.
Right.
They have a legal obligation to the state and the ratepayers to. Yeah, so do you think there are any aspects of this that I haven't really touched on, or do you think that would be important to bring up?
Well, I guess there's you know, one issue which we've touched on but not yet spoken about. You know, but basically this is a problem of democracy, and it's a problem of citizen participation, and you know, we get the kind of country we deserve because of the way we participate or don't participate in democracy. And you know, we certainly seem to be under a significant threat at this time in terms of making this a viable democracy. So that's you know, a very large issue that either overlies or underlies most of what we've talked about here.
And why do you think that the process that goes into proposing, siting, and developing wind projects is not sufficiently democratic or a threat to the democratic process?
All because the corporate influence on the fundamental legislation to begin with, and corporate influence on the regulatory commissions. It's well known that these agencies can become captured by the industry, and so and I think for probably from 2005 to 2015, that's a decade. The Vermont Public Service Board was captured by the renewable energy industry.
Do you think that the recent actions of 174 and the sound standards are a more hopeful representation?
Absolutely.
Of Vermont?
Right.
And do you think that has anything to do with kind of the town meeting and direct democratic nature of the state and how that kind of plays into it?
Yes. Right.
Is there any way that you could elaborate on that, or just?
Well, it's like I said when I started off. Vermont's small enough that you can know anybody you need to know. It's not 660,000 people, and there's only one governor, and you go to the right place at the right time, and you can probably talk to them. And likewise, your representatives and senators. And so I think the quality of democracy in Vermont is enhanced over certainly other parts of the country.
It seems like in the past, not a single project has been cited since large project has been cited, granted the certificate of public good since the Deerfield project, which was granted before the Lowell project was operational, and just, I don't know exactly why, but it just went operational, I think, last year, and it took a significant amount of time to get it off the ground. So do you see the Lowell project in that 2010 to 2012 period of time as being like a turning point in Vermont wind history and the way people think about it and the way it can be successful? And
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think you're correct in that analysis. The